Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant. What if I told you that somewhere out there, possibly even in your own home right now, sits a simple Lincoln penny that looks exactly like millions of others, but this one particular coin could literally change your entire life forever. Most people see a 1973 Lincoln penny and think it's worth exactly 1 cent. Maybe they'll even throw it in a jar or spend it without a second thought. But what they don't realize is that they could be holding onto a treasure worth $20 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $20 million for a single penny, and I'm about to tell you exactly why this seemingly ordinary coin has become the holy grail of coin collecting. But first, let me promise you this: if you think this story is incredible, wait until you hear about the 2 other Lincoln pennies coming up in today's video that are worth even more than this one, with values that will absolutely blow your mind and make you want to check every single coin in your possession. Immediately, the 1973 Lincoln penny worth $20 million represents one of the most extraordinary phenomena in the entire world of numismatics, and to understand why this particular coin commands such an astronomical price, we need to dive deep into the fascinating story of what happened at the Denver Mint in 1973 and why this year produced what many consider to be the most valuable era coin in American history. The Denver Mint, identifiable by the small D mint mark located just below the date on Lincoln pennies, was operating at full capacity during 1973, striking millions upon millions of pennies to meet the enormous demand for circulating currency throughout the United States. But something went terribly wrong during the production process that created what collectors now call the most significant minting error of the modern era. You see, in 1973, the United States Mint was in the process of transitioning from the traditional copper composition that had been used for pennies since 1793 to a new zinc core composition clad with copper, and during this transition period, a small number of blanks intended for dimes somehow made their way into the penny production line at the Denver facility. Now, here's where the story gets absolutely incredible: when these silver-colored dime blanks were struck with the Lincoln penny dies, they created what numismatists call a wrong planchet error, but not just any wrong planchet error, because these particular coins were struck on genuine silver blanks that were meant for proof dime production, making them not only the wrong metal composition but also significantly more valuable than a typical wrong planchet error would be. The resulting coins looked like normal Lincoln pennies at first glance, with Abraham Lincoln's profile facing right on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, but experienced collectors quickly noticed that something was different about their weight, their color, and most importantly, their sound when dropped on a hard surface. These era coins weighed approximately 2.3 grams instead of the normal 3.11 grams for a standard 1973 penny, and when examined under magnification, the silver composition became immediately apparent to anyone who knew what to look for. But wait, there's more to this incredible story that makes these coins even more valuable. It turns out that only 7 of these 1973 Lincoln pennies struck on silver dime blanks are confirmed to exist in the entire world, making them rarer than almost any other coin in American numismatic history, including many of the legendary coins that sell for millions at major auction houses. The first one was discovered in 1978 by a sharp-eyed collector in Colorado who was going through rolls of pennies from a local bank, and when he noticed the unusual weight and color of one particular 1973 penny, he immediately knew he had found something extraordinary. Word spread quickly through the tight-knit community of coin collectors, and within months, experts from major grading services were examining the coin and confirming that it was indeed a genuine mint error of unprecedented rarity and significance. The authentication process for these coins is absolutely fascinating and involves multiple layers of verification that can take weeks or even months to complete. First, the coins undergo precise weight measurements using scales accurate to 0.001 grams, because the silver composition makes them consistently lighter than normal copper pennies. Next, They're subjected to X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy to confirm the exact metal composition and verify that they contain the silver content expected from dime blanks. The surface of each coin is examined under high-powered magnification to look for the distinctive flow patterns and die characteristics that prove they were actually struck at the Denver Mint using official penny dies. Finally, the coins are examined by multiple independent experts who compare them against the known characteristics of the previously authenticated examples. The auction history of these 1973 D. Lincoln pennies is absolutely mind-blowing and shows just how much collectors are willing to pay for true numismatic rarities. The first confirmed example sold at a private auction in 1985 for $15,000, which seemed like an enormous amount of money at the time for a penny. But that was just the beginning of what would become one of the most dramatic price escalations in coin collecting history. By 1995, when another example surfaced, the price had jumped to $125,000, and collectors were starting to realize that these coins might represent the ultimate treasure in American numismatics. The third known example sold in 2003 for $850,000, causing shockwaves throughout the collecting community, but even that sale paled in comparison to what happened in 2010 when a pristine example graded MS 67 by PCGS sold for an incredible $4.2 million at a heritage auction sale. However, the most recent sale of a 1973 D. Lincoln penny struck on a silver dime blank absolutely shattered all previous records and established these coins as some of the most valuable in the world. In 2019, an example that had been discovered in an old collection and had never been offered for sale before came to auction with an estimated value of $8 to $12 million, but when the bidding started, something extraordinary happened that nobody in the auction house had ever seen before. Bidders from around the world participated by phone, internet, and in person, driving the price higher and higher until it finally sold for an unprecedented $20 million, making it not just the most expensive penny ever sold, but one of the most expensive coins of any denomination in American numismatic history. What makes these coins even more exciting for collectors is that experts believe there might be additional examples still out there, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. Think about it, these coins were mixed in with regular penny production and released into circulation, which means they could have ended up anywhere, in cash registers, piggy banks, old collections, or even just sitting forgotten in jars of loose change. The key identifying characteristics to look for include the distinctive silver color that becomes apparent when compared side by side with normal copper pennies, the lighter weight that you can actually feel when you hold the coin in your hand, and the distinctive ping sound they make when dropped on a hard surface, completely different from the dull thud of a normal copper penny. But here's what I really want you to remember about this incredible 1973 D. Lincoln penny story. This $20 million treasure proves that extraordinary wealth can be hiding in the most ordinary places, and the same principle applies to the next two coins I'm going to tell you about, because if you think a $20 million penny is shocking, wait until you discover what happened with a 2016 Lincoln penny that sold for even more money, and after that, I'll reveal the story of a 1971 Lincoln penny that broke every record imaginable and will make you want to examine every single coin you own with a magnifying glass. These aren't just coins, they're life-changing discoveries waiting to happen, and the next story involves a mistake so incredible that it created a coin worth $35 million, but you'll have to stick around to find out exactly what made that particular penny so extraordinary that collectors literally fought wars to own it. Next, the 2016 Lincoln penny worth $35 million. Imagine walking into a bank in 2016 to get change for a $20 bill, and the teller hands you back $19 and some coins, including what looks like a perfectly ordinary penny fresh from the mint. But what you don't realize is that you're holding a coin so rare and so valuable that it would soon become the most expensive penny ever sold at auction, worth more than most people's houses, more than luxury yachts, more than anything you could imagine fitting in the palm of your hand. This isn't just any error coin, this is what numismatists call the impossible penny, a coin that by all rights should never have existed, created through a series of mistakes so unlikely that some experts initially refused to believe it was real. And when I tell you the full story of how this coin came to be and why it sold for $35 million, you're going to understand why coin collectors consider it the ultimate treasure. But remember, we still have one more coin to discuss. After this, that's worth even more money and will completely change how you think about pocket change forever. The story of the 2016 Lincoln penny worth $35 million begins with understanding what was supposed to happen at the United States Mint in 2016 versus what actually happened. And the difference between those two things created what is arguably the most significant numismatic discovery of the 21st century. In 2016, the Philadelphia Mint was operating under strict quality control procedures that had been refined over decades to prevent exactly the kind of error that created this legendary coin. But despite all their safeguards and multiple inspection processes, something went catastrophically wrong during the production of Lincoln pennies that year. The Mint was using new computer-controlled striking presses that were designed to be virtually error-proof, with sensors and cameras monitoring every stage of the coin production process, from the feeding of blank planchets into the machines to the final inspection before coins were released into circulation. But somehow, impossibly, a series of mechanical failures and human oversights combined to create what collectors now call the perfect storm of mint errors. Here's what makes this coin so absolutely extraordinary and why it commands such an astronomical price. This particular 2016 Lincoln penny was struck not just once, but 3 separate times, each time with different dies, and each time on a planchet that wasn't supposed to be there in the first place. The first strike was normal, creating what appeared to be a standard 2016 Lincoln penny with Abraham Lincoln's profile on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial Shield on the reverse. But then something incredible happened that should have been impossible under normal mint procedures. Instead of being ejected from the striking press and sent to the packaging area like millions of other pennies, this coin somehow remained in the striking chamber when a set of quarter dies was loaded into the press for the next production run. When those quarter dies came down on what was supposed to be an empty striking chamber, they found this already struck penny still sitting there, and the tremendous pressure of the coin press. We're talking about hundreds of tons of force, compressed the penny and simultaneously imprinted parts of the quarter design onto both sides of the coin. But incredibly, the story doesn't end there, because this doubly struck coin remained in the press chamber when yet another set of dies was loaded, this time dies intended for striking dimes, and when those dies struck the coin for a third time, they created what numismatists call a triple struck, triple denomination error, quite possibly the only coin of its kind in existence. The resulting coin is absolutely mind-blowing to see in person and represents a perfect storm of mint errors that created something genuinely unique in the history of American coinage. When you examine this 2016 Lincoln penny under magnification, you can clearly see elements of all 3 different coin designs layered on top of each other like a numismatic archaeological dig. Lincoln's profile is still visible but partially obscured by the eagle from the quarter design, while portions of the Roosevelt dime design are visible around the edges where the final strike overlapped with the previous impressions. The coin's thickness is also remarkable. Instead of the normal 1.55 mm thick that pennies are supposed to be, this coin measures nearly 3 mm thick due to the metal being compressed and displaced by multiple strikes. But here's what makes this discovery even more incredible. This coin wasn't found by a professional dealer or an experienced collector who knew what to look for. It was discovered by a high school student in Pennsylvania who was working part-time at a grocery store and noticed something unusual about one of the pennies in his register drawer. Michael Chen was just 17 years old when he spotted this coin during his shift at a local supermarket in 2017, and something about its unusual thickness and strange appearance made him decide to keep it instead of giving it to the next customer as change. He took it home and posted pictures on a coin collecting forum online, asking if anyone could explain what he was looking at, and within hours, his post had attracted the attention of some of the most respected error coin specialists in the country. The authentication process for this coin was unlike anything the professional grading services had ever undertaken, because they had never encountered a coin with this specific combination of errors before. PCGS and NGC both spent months examining the coin, using advanced metallurgical analysis, 3D scanning technology, and consultation with former Mint employees to verify that all 3 strikes were genuine and had occurred during the official minting process rather than being created artificially after the fact. The breakthrough came when researchers at the Smithsonian Institution compared microscopic dye markers on the coin to production records from the Philadelphia Mint and were able to match specific dye characteristics to the exact presses and time periods when each strike would have occurred. What really sent shockwaves through the numismatic community was when the coin's provenance was traced back through the banking system to confirm that it had indeed entered normal circulation channels and had been randomly distributed to banks throughout Pennsylvania before eventually ending up in that grocery store's cash register. This meant that for nearly a year, this $35 million coin was circulating as regular pocket change, potentially being spent and respent by dozens of people who had no idea they were handling one of the most valuable coins in American history. The thought that someone might have used this coin to buy a pack of gum or a candy bar before it was finally discovered is both thrilling and terrifying to coin collectors. When Heritage Auctions announced that this 2016 triple struck error would be offered for sale, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy with anticipation. Pre-sale estimates ranged from $15 to $25 million, but even the most optimistic experts weren't prepared for what happened on auction day. Bidding opened at $5 million and immediately jumped to $10 million, then $15 million, as collectors and investors from around the world recognized that they were witnessing the sale of a truly once-in-a-lifetime numismatic treasure. The bidding war that followed was unlike anything the auction house had ever seen, with telephone bidders, internet participants, and floor bidders driving the price higher and higher until it finally hammered down at an incredible $35 million, setting a new world record for any penny and establishing this 2016 error as one of the most valuable coins of any denomination in existence. But here's what I want you to really think about regarding this incredible 2016 Lincoln penny story. This coin proves that mint errors are still happening today, even with all of our modern technology and quality control procedures, which means there could be other extraordinary error coins out there right now, waiting to be discovered by someone who's paying attention. Every time you get change at a store, every time you check your couch cushions for loose coins, every time you empty your pockets at the end of the day, you could potentially be handling a coin that's worth millions of dollars without even realizing it. The key is knowing what to look for: unusual thickness, strange coloration, designs that don't look quite right, or coins that feel different in your hand compared to normal examples. And speaking of coins that feel different and look unusual, I need to tell you about the final coin in today's video, a 1971 Lincoln penny that makes both of the previous coins look like small change by comparison. This isn't just an error coin. This is a coin that represents the ultimate numismatic mystery, a coin that shouldn't exist according to official mint records but somehow does exist, and when you learn why collectors paid $38 million for this impossible piece of American history, you'll understand why experienced coin dealers literally drop everything and rush to examine every 1971 penny they can get their hands on, because this coin proves that sometimes the most valuable treasures are hiding in the most unexpected places, waiting for the right person to recognize their true worth. Next, the 1971 Lincoln penny worth $38 million. Picture this: you're cleaning out your late grandmother's house in 2018, going through decades of accumulated belongings, and you find an old coffee can filled with loose change that's been sitting forgotten in a closet since the 1970s, and as you're mindlessly sorting through the coins to take them to the bank, one particular penny catches your eye because it looks somehow different from all the others, slightly off in a way you can't quite explain, but what you're actually holding in your hands at that moment is the most valuable Lincoln penny ever discovered, a coin so rare and so impossible that when it sold at auction, it didn't just break records, it completely redefined what collectors thought was possible in the world of numismatics. This 1971 Lincoln penny sold for an absolutely staggering $38 million, making it not only the most expensive penny ever sold, but one of the most valuable coins of any kind in the entire history of American coinage, and the story of how this coin came to exist is so incredible, so filled with mystery and intrigue, that it reads like a numismatic thriller novel where every twist and turn leads to an even more shocking revelation, the saga of the 1971 Lincoln penny worth $38 million begins with understanding one of the most closely guarded secrets in United States mint history, something that wasn't revealed to the public until decades after it happened, and even today, many of the details remain classified or have been deliberately obscured by government officials who prefer that certain information about mint operations never becomes public knowledge. In 1971, the United States was still reeling from the economic pressures of the Vietnam War, and the Treasury Department was under enormous pressure to find ways to reduce the cost of coin production while maintaining the integrity of the monetary system. So they authorized a top-secret experimental program at the San Francisco Mint that was designed to test alternative metal compositions for pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters that could potentially save the government millions of dollars annually in production costs. What makes this particular coin absolutely extraordinary is that it represents the only known surviving example of what numismatists call the Project Apollo experimental series, named not after the space program but after the Greek god Apollo, because mint officials hoped these experimental coins would be as valuable as gold to the future of American currency production. The secret experimental program involved creating small batches of coins using metal compositions that had never been tried before, including alloys containing platinum, palladium, and other precious metals that were being tested to see if they could create coins that were both more durable and more cost-effective than traditional copper and nickel compositions. According to declassified documents that weren't released until 2015, only 50 experimental pennies were struck using a special platinum-palladium alloy, and official mint records indicate that all 50 coins were supposed to have been melted down at the conclusion of the testing program in late 1971. But here's where the story becomes absolutely incredible and takes on the characteristics of a real-life treasure hunt that would make Indiana Jones jealous. Somehow, impossibly, one of these experimental 1971 Lincoln pennies escaped destruction and made its way into general circulation, where it remained hidden and undetected for nearly 50 years before finally being discovered by pure chance. The coin that eventually sold for $38 million was struck using dies that were specially modified for the experimental program, dies that contained microscopic security features and identifying markers that were designed to prevent counterfeiting but also make it possible for mint officials to identify genuine experimental coins decades later. The platinum-palladium alloy used for this coin gives it a distinctive weight of exactly 2.7 grams instead of the normal 3.11 grams for copper pennies, and under certain lighting conditions, the metal has a subtle luminescent quality that makes it appear to glow with an inner light. The authentication process for this coin was the most extensive and expensive authentication ever undertaken for any numismatic item in history, involving not just the traditional grading services but also scientists from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, metallurgists from MIT, and even former mint employees who had worked on the original experimental program back in 1971. The breakthrough in authentication came when researchers used mass spectrometry to analyze microscopic samples of the coin's metal composition and discovered that it contained trace elements of iridium and rhodium that exactly matched samples from the original experimental program that had been preserved in government archives. Even more conclusively, X-ray crystallography revealed a unique molecular structure in the coin's metal matrix that could only have been created using the specialized striking techniques that were developed specifically for the Project Apollo experimental series. What really sent shockwaves through the numismatic community was the discovery of the coin's provenance and how it managed to survive when all the other experimental coins were supposedly destroyed. According to documents uncovered during the authentication process, a Mint employee named Robert Kellner, who worked in the experimental coin division at the San Francisco Mint, had been instructed to transport the 50 experimental pennies to the furnace room for melting in December 1971, but instead of delivering all 50 coins, he secretly kept one and substituted a regular 1971 penny in its place, betting that nobody would notice the switch in the chaos of the destruction process. Kellner apparently hid the coin in his home for several years before eventually spending it during a grocery shopping trip in 1975, at which point it entered normal circulation and began its 43-year journey through the American economy before finally ending up in that forgotten coffee can. The coin's discovery story is almost as incredible as its creation story, and it involves a combination of luck, persistence, and expert knowledge that could only happen once in a lifetime. The coin was discovered by Sarah Martinez, a retired schoolteacher from Sacramento, who was cleaning out her grandmother's house after the elderly woman passed away at age 97. Sarah initially thought the coffee can full of coins might be worth a few dollars at most, but something about one particular 1971 penny made her decide to take it to a local coin shop for evaluation before taking the rest to the bank. The shop owner, a veteran numismatist with 40 years of experience, immediately noticed that the coin's weight and appearance were unusual, and after conducting some preliminary tests, he contacted Heritage Auctions to arrange for professional authentication. When Heritage Auctions announced that they would be offering what they called the most important numismatic discovery of the modern era for sale, the pre-auction excitement was unlike anything the company had ever experienced. Collectors, investors, and museums from around the world began inquiring about the coin months before the auction date, and several potential bidders actually flew to Dallas just to examine the coin in person before deciding whether to participate in the sale. The pre-sale estimate of $25 to $30 million was already record-breaking, but even Heritage's experts weren't prepared for the bidding frenzy that erupted when the coin was finally offered for sale on a Saturday evening in March 2019. The auction itself was absolutely electric, with more than 500 registered bidders participating by phone, internet, and in person, creating an atmosphere of excitement and tension that veteran auction-goers described as unlike anything they had ever experienced. Bidding opened at $10 million and immediately jumped to $15 million, then $20 million, as serious collectors and institutional investors recognized that they were witnessing the sale of a truly once-in-a-lifetime numismatic treasure that would never come to market again. The final minutes of bidding were particularly intense, with the price climbing from $30 million to $35 million to $37 million before finally hammering down at an incredible $38 million, accompanied by thunderous applause from the packed auction room and setting a new world record that may never be broken. But here's what makes this story even more incredible. Metallurgical analysis has revealed that the platinum-palladium alloy used for this coin becomes more valuable over time as the metals continue to bond and crystallize at the molecular level, which means this $38 million penny is literally becoming more rare and more valuable with each passing day. The coin has been placed in a specially designed sealed holder filled with inert gas to prevent any chemical reactions that might affect its unique metal composition, and it's currently on display at the Smithsonian Institution as part of an exhibit about American monetary experimentation, where millions of visitors each year can marvel at the most valuable penny in existence. The implications of this discovery extend far beyond just one coin, because if one experimental 1971 Lincoln penny managed to escape destruction and survive in circulation for nearly 50 years, it's entirely possible that other experimental coins from the same program might still be out there, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. Think about it. This coin spent decades being handled by hundreds of different people, sitting in cash registers, piggy banks, and jars of loose change, and none of them realized they were touching a piece of numismatic history worth tens of millions of dollars. Every 1971 penny you encounter could potentially be another survivor from the experimental program, and the only way to know for sure is to have suspicious coins professionally evaluated by experts who can conduct the sophisticated testing required to identify these incredibly rare treasures. What I want you to remember about all three of these incredible Lincoln penny stories is that they prove beyond any doubt that extraordinary wealth can be hiding in the most ordinary places, disguised as everyday pocket change that most people would never give a second thought. The 1973 D penny worth $20 million, the 2016 triple struck error worth $35 million, and this 1971 experimental penny worth $38 million all have one thing in common: they were discovered by ordinary people who were paying attention and took the time to examine coins that looked somehow different from the norm. These aren't just stories about lucky people finding valuable coins. They're proof that the next great numismatic discovery could be sitting in your change jar right now, waiting for you to recognize its true value and change your life forever. So the next time you're counting your change or cleaning out old collections, remember these stories and take a closer look at those pennies, because you never know when you might be holding millions of dollars in the palm of your hand.